Hey guys, Preacher 357 here, out here at the shop at the cleaning table, and I am out here on a very cold day. It was 70 something degrees yesterday here in Tennessee, and it's in the 20s now, and it's snowing and sleeting. So I'm out here in the shop, and I thought I would talk to you a little bit today about my favorite cartridge, and one of the reasons why I chose the name Preacher 357. Obviously, I'm a preacher, so that's the preacher aspect of it, but 357 is my favorite chambering. However, chambering and cartridge are two different things. I like the 357 chambering because it actually allows me to shoot 357 Magnum and my favorite cartridge, which is the 38 Special. So I thought I would talk to you a little bit about the 38 Special today, because you can't have a 357 without a 38 Special. It was the predecessor. And that round came out in the late 1800s. 1898 is when I believe it was designed, and it was marketed in 1899 in the Smith & Wesson 38 hand ejector, also known as the M&P, the military and police. And that's not the new M&Ps that we're talking about, the semi-auto handguns that are on the market today. We're talking about a revolver here. Smith & Wesson has used that M&P term for over 100 years now. That's something that's unique to their brand. It's a brand name for them. So they came out with this 38 Special in their revolvers in 1899. The funny thing about the 38 Special is it's not 38 caliber. It's .357, .358 caliber, depending on whether it's a jacketed or a lead round usually. So it's not 38 caliber. Well, why is it called 38 Special if it's not a 38? And that goes back in time a little bit. The 38 Special was actually based upon the 38 short Colt and long Colt cartridges. And you say, well, why would Smith & Wesson base their cartridge off of a Colt cartridge, which was a competitor of theirs? Especially when you realize that Smith & Wesson, going back to the 1870s, already had their own 38 caliber cartridge. The 38 Smith & Wesson, though it was actually not 38 caliber either, it was .361, but that's another matter we'll get to in a second. And so they based the 38 Special off the 38 short Colt, 38 long Colt platforms. Well, why would they do that? Well, we have to understand why the 38 Special was created. The 38 Smith & Wesson Special was contracted by the government. It was something the military wanted Smith & Wesson to produce for them, which is why it came to be known as a military and police, an M&P. Because the military wanted this cartridge. Colt in 1892 had come out with their 1892 model revolver, which also had a swing out cylinder. It was very similar to the 38 hand ejectors that Smith & Wesson would make. But it chambered the 38 long Colt cartridge. There was a very brief war called the Philippine War, Philippine-American War, that occurred in 1899, in that range, 1898, in that range. Of course, we also had another war in that same era, the Spanish-American War. But during these wars, they found that the 38 long Colt cartridge was not sufficient. It didn't have enough power. I think especially the Filipino warriors they were facing had shields, and the round was so weak that it couldn't get through their shields. And so they realized they needed something more powerful, and they went to Smith & Wesson and said, we need something better. And so Smith & Wesson took that 38 long Colt platform that the government was already using as the basis for what they were going to create. And that only makes sense because a 38 Special revolver will also chamber the 38 long Colt. So if you have, surplus ammo in the military that you need to use for something, it could still be used in these new revolvers that Smith & Wesson was making for the military. So it only made sense to base it off that same cartridge, because then you could still use that previous ammunition, that old ammunition that you had in stock. And so they created this 38 Special cartridge. But why is it 36 caliber, .357, .358 if it's called 38? And that goes back to the early days of these cartridges, when these cartridges were what were known as heeled bullets. They contained heeled bullets. And a heeled bullet is one where the bullet mushrooms out after it comes out of the case to where it's the same diameter as the case. The 38 short Colt was originally designed to be used in converted 36 caliber revolvers that were old cap and ball revolvers that had been converted, and these were new cartridges that were designed to fit in a conversion of those. And so a lot of that goes into why these were called 38s, even though they aren't technically 38 caliber, because the total diameters of the cases were larger than the bullets, and so it's a 38 caliber case basically, essentially, even though the bullet that is inside that case now is only a 36 caliber roughly, a .357, .358 caliber. And so we have a 38 Smith & Wesson Special, and it can be called 38 Special, 38 Smith & Wesson Special. They're both the same thing, but they're not to be confused with a 38 Smith & Wesson, which is that older cartridge, and they are not compatible. The two don't interchange at all. So that can be confusing for some people, though luckily we don't run across 38 Smith & Wesson ammo that much anymore. And so it's not nearly a problem that it would have been 100 years ago when 38 Smith & Wesson was still somewhat common. Especially during World War II, when you had the British using the 38 Smith & Wesson, they called it the 38-200. But their revolvers that were made for them in the Second World War by Smith & Wesson were chambered in that. So they had the same revolvers that the Americans had, but they were chambered in a different cartridge, so that could get confusing. So the hand ejectors, the 38 hand ejectors, the M&Ps, were released in 1899. And they became extremely popular. Not as much with the military. The military actually tended to stay with Colt. Colt redesigned their military firearm into a larger bore and eventually came out with a 1911, which was the semi-auto that really took over the military market. And so the Smith & Wesson M&P was not much of a military handgun, though it was used some, as we talked about the Victory models that were used in World War II. But for the most part, it was more of a police model, and it came to be the predominant police gun used in the United States until at least the 1970s, until the K-frame 357s really kind of took over from the 38s, and then obviously the 9mm and the semi-autos took over from there in the 80s, starting in the 80s. And so this 38 hand ejector model, which would later be known as the Model 10, became probably the most popular firearm ever created. And millions upon millions of them were built and sold all throughout the world. I have a Model 10 here, which is essentially the same as the 38 hand ejector. There's a few differences. It has less screws than the original, though that's changed over the years as well. They've made a lot of changes in it. This one has a hammer block in it the originals didn't have. The original one did not have this lug on the front here for the ejector to go into. It was just open like a lot of the Colts were. This was actually the very first engineering change that they made to these firearms, to put this on here with this little plunger that's in the front right here to help lock up the cylinder. And Smith & Wesson actually patented that. They made it so that Colt or no one else could use that for a very, very long time, that type of technology. So a lot of the Colt revolvers you'll see won't have this at all on there. And there's a reason for that, because they couldn't use it because Smith & Wesson had patented it. They were the only ones that could use that technology, and it was revolutionary at the time. But this is a Model 10. This was made in 1968. It's an old police trade-in that was brought back in from overseas. This was actually one that was exported out of country. I'm not really sure where. And then imported back, I think, by Century Arms. Yeah, Century Arms International imported this one back in, and I bought it. And was really tickled to find this because it's in really good shape considering how old it is. In fact, it's police trade-in. Some of these police trade-ins are in really bad shape. The grips are a little bit beat up, but not too bad. It was sufficient quality and cheap enough that I thought it was a really good buy. And I'd always wanted one of these because a lot of your Model 10s that you see now that are on the market are what they call the heavy barrel models, which they changed the barrel up on these in the 60s, I believe it was, when they came out with the heavy barrels. And they still manufacture the taper barrels for a long time, but the heavy barrels became the prevalent version of the Model 10 and really took over. And I don't have a heavy barrel Model 10 to show you, but I do have a Model 13. A Model 13 is the same thing as a Model 10, except it's chambered in 357 Magnum. After steel manufacturing got to a certain level, they were able to start chambering these guns in 357 rather than just 38 Special, because the steel became strong enough with modern steel, modern metallurgy, to handle that round. And so the 357 Magnum here, this Model 13, is identical except in the size of the cylinder. This would have the same size cylinder as this, and you can see, I think, that the cylinder on a 357 Magnum has to be a little bit longer because the 357 Magnum is a little longer cartridge. But this is the heavy barrel that I was talking about, whereas this is the tapered barrel. And the heavy barrel has this ramp front sight, and the tapered barrel still has like this half moon front sight, which was, you know, very common on the early revolvers. This is actually in a nickel finish. This isn't a stainless gun. It may look stainless on the camera, but this is actually a nickel finish. Smith & Wesson, their models would come in either a blued, like this one, or a nickel finish. Up until 1960, when they came out with the Model 60, which was their first stainless steel gun. And the Model 60 was actually the same gun as the Model 36, just in stainless steel. So Smith & Wesson, if it's stainless, has a different number than a blued or a nickeled gun. So if it's blued or nickeled in this type of gun, it will be a Model 10. Of course, this is the Model 13, because I'm speaking as though this were a 38 Special. If it's blued or nickeled, like this gun here, it would be a Model 10. If it's stainless, but exactly the same gun, it's a Model 64. But those didn't come out until, you know, a little bit later, when their stainless guns started coming out. It really wasn't until the 70s that you really started to see the prevalence of stainless steel used in handguns. But this was made in 1968, so at that time there was no Model 64. As far as I know, I don't believe the 64 had come out yet. Now, I may be wrong, I haven't checked that, but I don't believe so. And so, this is a Model 10. This was what so many police officers throughout the country and around the world carried for probably 80 years. Up into the 80s even. If you ever watch Police Academy, if you remember that comedy that came out in the early 80s, Police Academy, when they're on the firing line there, and they're all learning to shoot, they're given 38 Specials, though I don't believe they were the taper barrels. I think they were given the heavy barrel Smith & Wessons, the heavy barrel Model 10s in that movie to shoot. And of course they get down to the end, and the guy who loved firearms, he's got a 44 Magnum, you know, that he shoots and scares everybody, you know, and they take it away from him and ask him where he got it from, and he says his mom gave it to him. But they were shooting, everyone besides the tactical guy was shooting a Model 10, whereas he was shooting that 44 Magnum. And there's a big difference between a Model 10 and a Model 29 or 629. There's a lot of difference in how loud they are and how much recoil and how much concussive blast they have. I've been at the range many times where I unloaded a 44 Magnum with people around, and everyone stops and starts to turn and look, because most people are used to 9mm or maybe a 45 or 38s or what have you, and you unload a 44 Magnum in there and it gets attention. You unload a 460 in an indoor range like that and it scares people to death. You can feel the pressure change in the room when you do that. In fact, the concussive blast knocked some of the fluorescent lights out of the ceiling when I shot it in there. I was actually on the rifle range too, the one that was supposed to be used for rifle at an indoor range, but it did. They dropped out of the ceiling and busted on the ground because of the concussion from that 460. That thing, you can tell, you can even feel that when you shoot it outside. It's impressive, the blast that you get from that thing. It doesn't hurt your hand. That gun's so big and so heavy and has such a nice big grip on it that it really doesn't hurt your hand, but you can tell you set something off when you let her go. But I'm getting off subject here. We're talking about the Smith & Wesson Model 10 here. And the Model 10 is a great shooting gun. A lot of people consider it one of the most accurate guns to shoot. Now, obviously, you can get a Model 15 or the 14s, which were adjustable sight models. And the 14 especially was considered a target gun. But the 38 Special is an extremely accurate cartridge to shoot. Part of that's because it has so little recoil compared to a lot of the modern cartridges. It's so much easier to shoot. You're not anticipating that recoil, because even good shooters will do that. You'll anticipate the recoil and you'll try to fight that recoil, and you'll flinch. Sometimes I catch myself doing that when I'm shooting, and I think I've got another round and I don't, and I pull that trigger and I flinch and I catch myself, and I just have to shake my head because I know better than to do that. But I love shooting the 38 Special. I love shooting this little gun here. I enjoy this gun immensely. It doesn't have as good a trigger as some of my other Smith & Wessons, I will say that. It's got a good trigger. I wouldn't call it a great trigger. I think this Model 13 has a better trigger of the two. And I've got a couple of 357s, a Model 66, and of course my 686 Plus that I just did a cleaning on in a comparison with Ruger. That 686 Plus has got the most crisp trigger that I've ever felt. I tell you what, guys, looks like it's not snowing too bad out there right now, and I'm just itching to put some rounds down range. So why don't we go out to the range for just a little bit and sling a little bit of lead out of this Model 10 and enjoy this old revolver, this old technology that I think is so cool. And then we'll wrap this thing up and I'll let you guys go. All right, guys, I'm out here on the range now, and I've got my Smith & Wesson Model 10. It's a Model 10-5. I was thinking that's what it was. Manufactured in 1968. And we're going to do a little bit of shooting until my hands are so frozen I can't shoot no more. So it may not take long. It's only about 27, 28 degrees, I think, out here right now. Snow's falling, so let's put a few rounds down range here and see what we can do. See if we can actually hit anything with our hands numb. Let's give her a shot here. Shooting 158 grain 38 Special, loaded up with bullseye powder, which I loaded myself. These are semi-wad cutters, my favorite load. Let's see what we can do here. Not too bad. Oh, I just missed. Let's see. Try to get a good sight picture. Make sure I know where this is hitting. Let's see if I can hit this little one. I don't know if I can hit it or not. Oh, I grazed him. Click. That was it. I grazed him. I'm going to call that a win. I'm going to call that a hit. And not press my luck too much. Those little plates give me fits. I wish I'd never hung them up, because them being there means I got to try to hit them. And I can't always do that. I think my ejector rod is backed out a little bit, maybe. There you go. Let's shoot this cowboy target over here from Arnson Targets. He's nice and big. I should be able to hit him. Yeah. Go out to 35 yards to that IPSC target out there. There we go. And that's all she wrote for that cylinder. May actually throw a few over there at the rifle plate I got out there at about 75, 80 yards out there. I don't know if I can hit anything. This gun's really not designed for that. And 38 Special is not the best cartridge to be shooting at distance with, because it drops a lot. These 158 grain especially don't have a lot of velocity to them. So let's just put a few more on these, shooting double action. Yeah, looks like the gun's taking just a hair under a center hold, not quite a 6 o'clock hold. That one I missed on the big target, I took a little bit under a 6 o'clock hold and just missed it. That's usually where I like it. I like it to be just about a center hold, if not just a tad below a center hold, but I really don't like it to go all the way to a 6 o'clock. You know, 6 o'clock being at the very bottom of the target where you shoot below the, where you aim below the target. If this was the target right here, and I'll use this one here. If this was the target right here, if you're taking a 6 o'clock hold, you're gonna aim right here at the bottom. And that would be where you'd shoot. If you're taking a dead on hold, you shoot right in the middle. A 12 o'clock hold would be up here. And it just depends on how your sights are adjusted. And then obviously, you can't do much adjusting with this unless you want to get out a file, and I wouldn't recommend getting a file out on your guns. You just make a mess unless you really know what you're doing. And I hate to tell you, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I am definitely a gun non-expert, and I'll never say any different. I know a little bit, and that's about all I know. I'll tell you what I know, but I ain't gonna tell you I know it all, because I don't. Let's go out there to that 2/3 IPSC again out there at 35 yards. Click. Of course, I'm saving my brass because I am a reloader, or a hand loader as some people like to say. Either term's fine with me. So there's times I buy brand new brass and it's all brand new stuff, so in that case it's really not reloading because it hadn't been loaded before, it's just hand loading, but most of the time it's reused cases. Alright, let's shoot a little bit more here. And that's all she wrote. Put a few more through it. I can still feel my hands a little bit, so it ain't time to quit yet. Oh, I just had a, there it went. Just had a light primer strike there. If you caught that on tape there. First round didn't fire, and I actually thought that I'd run out. I hadn't been counting. But I usually go ahead and pull the trigger one more time just to see, and that next round fired. And then I knew I had a light primer strike, so I had to rotate them all back around again until she fired. I don't know if it was just a hard primer, or I don't know what the case was there. Probably need to check the strain screw on the Smith & Wesson here. There's a screw in the front right there. I don't know if you can see that little screw right there. It's called the strain screw, and that's what gives you the tension on your leaf spring that's in here. If you saw the disassembling videos where I cleaned the 686, or where I made the comparison between the 686 and the Ruger, you'll see it had a leaf spring that's in there, and there's a screw that tightens into that leaf spring, and the more you tighten that screw down, the more tension you get on the leaf spring. Well, the problem is if they back out a little bit, then you lose your tension on that hammer, and it doesn't have quite as much energy. Tell you what, I'm gonna lob a few down here at this one at 75-80 yards, this rifle plate. It's a 1/2 inch steel. It's a 12-inch round 1/2 inch steel plate, and then we'll call her done. I'm going to adjust the camera for this. So, all right, guys, I'm going to try this. See if I can't hit this target down here. Now, this gun was obviously not designed for shooting something this far away. From where I am right now, it's probably about 70 yards because I've come in front of the shooting table a little bit now to get a better shot. So we're looking at about a 70-yard shot on a 12-inch plate, which is doable, but it's not really what a gun like this was designed to do. These fixed sight guns, not the best sight picture, nasty day like today, freezing cold hands. We'll see. Maybe I can hit something. I've got 6 more rounds in my pocket, so we'll throw 2 cylinders at it, just see what we can do. So I'm gonna give her a shot here and just see. there's one hit. Right beside it. Two hits. Right beside it. And I knew that was off and I pulled the trigger. Oh, she wrote. That 6 went awfully quick. All right, I'll put 6 more on there and see if I can hit them. Maybe. We'll give her a try at least. And then I gotta go inside the shop because I'm about to freeze. I can't even feel my fingers at this point. I'm sure all the people up north are gonna laugh at that, but you know, it was nearly 80 degrees here yesterday. It's 20 something now, so I didn't have time to get prepared. Here we go. See if we can put any more on this target down there. That went way off. I don't know what happened to that. Right beside it. There's one. There's 2. And that'll have to be good enough for today. So let's get back in the shop where we can warm up a little bit. All right, guys, I'm back in the shop now, trying to warm up a little bit. I may have to change my name from Preacher 357 to Popsicle 357 because I'm just a solid piece of ice at the moment. But it was worth it to get out there and shoot a good old Model 10 Smith & Wesson. I had a great time. I always love getting out there and smelling the gunpowder and putting a few rounds down range and just feeling one of these in my hand. It just brings a smile to your face. There's just something about these old revolvers that I just absolutely adore. Even more so than the new ones. And I like the new guns. I'm not going to badmouth the new guns. I have several of those too. But the revolvers are really my favorite. They're what bring me the most joy. And that's really what this hobby is about. This sport is about. It's about bringing joy, right? I mean, obviously, we know about the Second Amendment, and we know about defending our rights, and we know about self-protection and personal defense and all those things which guns are good for, but they're also just fun. There's something to be said about just the hobby of shooting and enjoying it. Everything doesn't have to be about training. Now, there's nothing wrong with training. Training is a very good thing. I think if you carry a firearm for defense, you should train with it. You should be prepared. You should be well-versed with it. But that don't mean you can't just go out and have fun sometimes too. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm going out and having fun. This is not going to be a carry gun for me. I'm not going to carry a Model 10. It's just not one of the options I'm going to carry. Now I carry a Smitty, which is the same caliber, very similar gun, a little bit smaller, J-frame. And so there are some differences there, but there's a lot of similarities too, but I'm not going to carry this gun. So this was all just for fun today. And I thought I might bring y'all along and maybe introduce you to the Model 10 if you weren't familiar with it, maybe tell you some things about it, maybe teach you some things you didn't know. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully maybe you'll be looking at possibly finding one of these for yourself and being able to enjoy it just the way that I did today. These guns are still available. If you don't have a Model 10, you should be able to find one. Of course, they're still making them in their classic series. They only make it in the bull barrel, though, the heavy barrel. They don't make the tapered barrel any longer. But you can still find these as police trade-ins. They're still coming in from overseas, where these guns were used overseas. And so there were millions and millions of these guns made, so they are still available. And if you don't have one of them, I suggest going and getting one, because they're a great gun. They're a good price. They're usually pretty cheap. Now, you may not get pristine condition, but you don't have to have pristine condition. Or maybe you can even find an older model, one of the M&Ps, or maybe one of the Victory models. Though if you do find a Victory model, be very careful. The Victory models were also sold to England, and they were chambered in the 38 Smith & Wesson, or what England called the 38-200 cartridge. But a lot of those were shipped back to the United States from overseas, and they were converted back to 38 Special, and some of those were not converted very well. And they may actually be dangerous to shoot. And even if they were converted properly, so to speak, you're probably still going to have cases that split, and you're not going to have very good accuracy. But guys, just be safe. God bless you. This is Preacher 357, and y'all take care.